Joining me around the table, Congressman Steny Hoyer, House Minority Whip and second in command to Nancy Pelosi, and Congressman Tom Cole, a Deputy Whip for the Republican Conference. Also, CNN's Dana Bash, Chief Congressional Correspondent for us. The only people more unpopular in Washington than the president at this point is you all.
What a positive way to start.
And welcome. Why is that?
Well, because Congress, I think, is perceived as not very effective and not working well.
Is it perceived that way, or has it been?
I think it is. I think that's the reality. My friend Tom, before we broke, said, well, the Senate wasn't passing things. But the fact is, frankly, the Senate has passed most of the big pieces of legislation that we've dealt with, and that we've come then, and by pretty bipartisan margins. And then the House has come at one stage or another to support those. But the fact is, generally, I think the American public generalizes the Congress is not working.
Let me get you to fill us in on one thing, because I want to ask specifically about immigration reform, which I recall saying last year was definitely going to pass. So I'm not going to say that this year. But the House Republicans have been working on putting something on the floor, and I wanted to get kind of a sense of where it's going.
My understanding is that the Speaker, along with some of his top lieutenants, maybe you're one of them, probably, working on a set of
Master Sergeant, I'm well
principles, a set of principles that he will deliver to and discuss with the Republican caucus at the retreat, which is going to be this coming week. And the idea is to deal with border security and some of the top issues, of course, for conservatives, but also to sort of dip a toe in the water to perhaps at least giving legal status to illegal immigrants. But the most important thing is that he, the Speaker, understands that this is going to have to be done piecemeal. And most interesting is that the President and Democrats have been saying, okay, we don't want to do it that way, but we're going to let you do it, because they want to get as far as they can in order to try to meld bills between the House and the Senate in what's known as the conference.
Why are you laughing? Is it going to happen?
Well, we'll see. Look, I think we've got a Republican retreat later this week. A lot of basic decisions will be made there. We've already moved about 4 bills through the Judiciary Committee, so there are pieces that are available to go to the floor. There's some other things that are still in progress, so I certainly think that items can pass here. But I think the Speaker had it about right. Look, it's going to be piece by piece. It's going to be step by step. It's not going to be the comprehensive sort of Senate approach, and it's going to have to be bipartisan if it's going to move.
Now, we can, I think, probably rule out some conservative Republicans who do not want a pathway to legalization. So the question will be, how many Democrats can you wrap around some of these bills? It is my understanding that one of these would suggest, yes, for children who were brought here, not of their own free will, but with their parents, they can have a pathway to citizenship, but not the others would get a pathway to legalization, not citizenship. Is that something you could work with?
Candy, we're for that, as you know. We passed a DREAM Act in times past.
Right, but what about
we believe the young people ought to be able to, who didn't do anything wrong, who came here, who have done well in high school and or college, ought to be recognized on a pathway to citizenship. The fact is that the Senate passed, in a very bipartisan way, a comprehensive immigration bill. Now, what the president says and what we have said we would consider is, if the Republicans can move forward with some aspects of immigration reform, that's fine. We can pass those. We'll have to meet with the Senate that's passed a comprehensive immigration reform and see what comes out of conference. But we strongly believe that it needs to be a comprehensive bill, not simply a piecemeal bill. Because if you pass just the economic segments, which we could support, and not the other segments that give people confidence that they can continue to work, support their families, and be here, that's not a bill that will fix the broken system.
Well, not a promising approach. I mean, look, the Speaker's made a couple of commitments to his own conference. The first one is, I'm not going into conference with something that doesn't have a majority Republican support. I'm not taking something out that doesn't have majority support. So I take him at his word, and I think that's the appropriate way to go. But look, this is a huge problem, and to call the Senate bill bipartisan, it is, but it was a minority of Republicans with an overwhelming majority of Democrats. You're not going to move a product like that through the House. A minority of the minority in the Senate can't dictate to the majority of the majority in the House.
And Congressman, tell me if you agree with this, just sort of looking at the House big picture, particularly your conference, the Republicans. My understanding is that looking at it, it's about 30 of you based on the number of Hispanic voters in their districts, really want to have some kind of immigration reform. About 30 kind of could go either way. And most of the rest, it is a liability to do something that even goes towards legal status, because of the whole idea that most of the districts are very conservative, and their biggest fear is a challenge from the right. So that is the big problem that John Boehner has in trying to find some kind of consensus within your caucus. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, but I also think this is a bigger problem in the sense that we have two fundamental American values in conflict here. We are a nation of immigrants. We're proud of that. Frankly, there's no immigrant group that's ever come to this country that hasn't contributed more than it ever received back. So that's something we celebrate. We're also a country of laws. That's how you unite 315 million Americans across a great continent. So those things are in conflict here. I think there's not going to be an amnesty bill, no doubt about that. Frankly, nobody's put one on the table,
Certainly
in my view.
It's not going to be called that much.
Well, look, if you look at any of the proposals, background check, English, requirement to have a job, all that sort of thing, that you can say it's enough, fines, or not enough, but it's not amnesty. So people that use that phrase, I think, mischaracterize whatever we're going to do.
Tom, if I can step in, though, first of all, a third of the Republicans in the United States Senate voted for the comprehensive bill. 68 people voted for it. The fact of the matter is it was comprehensive. It did have a path. It wasn't amnesty. It provided for working, paying taxes, and a long time, 10 years, then 3 additional years, so that, frankly, when Tom says the majority of the majority has to be for something, comprehensive immigration reform, Tom, in my opinion, would pass the House today. There are 218-plus votes, in my view, to pass that bill. But you're locking up pieces of legislation because you have a hardcore majority of your party that will not be for it.
I didn't notice when you were in the majority, you put a lot of bills on the floor that the majority of your conference wasn't for. Matter of fact, I don't recall any. Actually, John Boehner did that on the fiscal cliff, did that on violence against women. But the reality is that's just the way Congress works. The bill that was in the Senate, was, again, put on by the Democrats.
We got 218 Democrats for the things we put on the floor. You've had great trouble in any of the major pieces of legislation doing that. Without Democrats, you couldn't have passed most of the major legislation we passed. That's true of immigration reform, and we need to pass it.
I suggest we've been bipartisan in our approach. We've been reaching out to you. Too bad you didn't do that when you were in the majority.
Including you two will be running for re-election this year. And I want to ask you both a political question. The first one comes off this new Washington Post ABC News poll, and to you, Congressman Hoyer. The opinion of the way President Obama is handling the economy, 43% approve, 55% disapprove. Is he a drag on your ticket?
No, what they disapprove of is the economy, and the president takes responsibility whether he's Republican or Democrat.
So does that mean that he drags Democrats at this point?
I talked to a lot of people last night involved in the economy. They think the economy is getting better. I frankly think that the confidence that was built up by passing the omnibus appropriation bill is going to be helpful to the economy. I think we acted in a bipartisan fashion. I think that's good for the economy. Now, in my opinion, we need to extend unemployment insurance. We need to get a minimum wage bill done. We need to address some of the other issues, like comprehensive immigration reform, that every economist says will grow the economy. But the failure to do that has been a drag on the economy, not because the president has
Is it a drag on Democrats running for re-election?
I think if you look at the same poll, Democrats are doing better than Republicans. Neither of us are doing very well.
Very well.
So to the extent that the economy gets better, frankly, and the president gets credit for that, I think we're going to do better.
To you, Congressman Cole, which political party do you think is more concerned with the needs of people like you? Democrats 46%, Republicans 37%. Cares about people like you is such a key indicator to how people vote for the president, and I suspect how they vote for their representative. How are you all going to do this year?
Well, I think I think we'll do better than those numbers suggest, because I think some of the dissatisfaction actually is on the right, where people think we haven't been conservative enough. Those folks are going to come back and vote Republican. But the underlying point, I think, is a really serious one for both of us to think about. Look, I think the country is not in a very good mood. That really reflects on the president, reflects on the Congress. That's pretty normal. But the amount of time this has gone on, this has been for years now, not a matter of months or weeks. So it suggests that we do need to find some common ground. We do need to work together. I'm like Mr. Hoyer here. I was very pleased to see us come to a common budget agreement between Paul Ryan and Patty Murray. I was very pleased to see us move to an omnibus. I think we're going to go back to sort of what's called regular order on the Hill and move our appropriations bills through. I think that'll raise confidence and, frankly, benefit both parties.
I want to ask you both to stick with me, Dana as well. When we come back, I'll ask you if Speaker Boehner can survive another year from his caucus.